Hey guys, it's Alvin and Jess, and we are
The Most Potato, the podcast where you and your fellow couch potatoes can get together and discuss all things good, bad, and deep in popular media.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing Netflix's They Cloned Tyrone. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't watched this movie yet, save this episode and come join us after you've watched it.
Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you guys enjoy the show.
All right, so we're talking They Cloned Tyrone today. How'd you feel about it?
I felt like it was a really good movie and that we should talk about it today.
Definitely. So we're discussing They Cloned Tyrone today. This movie's directed by Jewel Taylor, a fairly newcomer. He's done some work for writing in previous movies, but I think this is like his directorial debut.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, which I think he knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, guys, we like the movie. The movie's directed by Jewel Taylor, written also by Jewel Taylor and Tony Rettenmeyer. The characters that we follow are a trio, and their names are Fontaine. He is a drug dealer in a town called The Glen.
Mm-hmm.
We have Yo-Yo, the local sex worker. And I forgot to mention, John Boyega is playing Fontaine.
Oh, yeah. How could you forget that?
I don't know. I don't know. This is a very memorable cast. So John Boyega plays Fontaine, a local drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
We have the beautiful, magnificent Teyonah Parris playing Yo-Yo. John Boyega is very beautiful, too. He's very gorgeous.
Yes.
This is a very beautiful cast. And we cannot forget the legendary Jamie Foxx.
Playing Slick Charles.
Slick Charles, the local pimp that nobody listens to.
He's not intimidating at all with his ridiculous fur coat and his gold gun.
He's got the look. He just don't got the walk. He just really has no power over people. It's so funny. A pimp with no power over his hoes.
Wow.
Yeah. So this movie was dropped back in July 21st. On Netflix.
It was released earlier than that, I believe.
Yeah, and nobody's really talking about this movie, which is a damn shame because this is a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Finally, I get my movie that takes place in the hood that is a sci-fi. You don't know how long I've been wanting to see or even make a horror or sci-fi that takes place in the hood.
Yeah.
I mean, I also probably haven't been exposed to many movies like that. The closest things I've seen is like Candyman, like the original one. And I can't say I'm a fan of it.
I watched that? No.
I think we rewatched it, or we watched it for the first time after watching the new one that had dropped a couple years back.
It's like I always do that. It's like how I watched Dr. Sleep, and then I went back to The Shining.
Yeah, well, The Shining is like an acquired taste for a lot of people. So I'm not surprised you weren't exposed to that first. Anyways, so we're following this trio of misfit heroes. They're definitely like an unlikely band of heroes because these are people who are marginalized in our society. They're essentially deemed quote unquote criminals. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really apply the quotes to Teyonah Parris because sex workers are criminalized, but they're not really technically doing any harm the way that a drug dealer or a pimp would cause harm.
Yeah.
So these are our main heroes. So nobody's really like a perfectly decent, squeaky clean person, which already makes for a very entertaining and exciting story.
Yeah.
So this movie was released July 21st. I have not seen a lot of people talk about it, and it is a shame because people need to go watch this and definitely discuss. There's like so much going on in this.
Yeah, I think it'll pick up as people like start to like really catch on with it because, I mean, the ratings are really good, for it.
Yeah.
People are surprised at what they found. It's like a hidden gem.
I mean, that's what you get with Netflix, sadly, specifically with the movies. Their series tends to be more consistent with how good they can be. Movies is literally like you get flop, 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 flop. Oh, a decent gem, flop, 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 flop.
And then you just assume I'm just not going to watch it because it's Netflix and it's probably trash anyway. But this is not garbage. It's good.
Definitely. So, let's just break down the plot really quickly about what this movie's about. So essentially, we're following our protagonist, Fontaine, the local drug dealer in what's described as a retro-futuristic neighborhood called the Glen. And by retro-futurist, it's really more like it looks like modern day with 1970s aesthetics in terms of people's clothes, the cars that you see.
And even the picture. The
picture itself, there's like a grainy filter on it. It's not filmed with film, it's filmed digitally, but they put like a graininess over it to look like the 1970s and 80s like blaxploitation films.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. So we follow Fontaine, who appears to live with his mother, who stays in her room all day. We never get to see her. And he has this routine where he basically goes on his runs as a drug dealer. We see that he is mourning the death of his younger brother, as we see a sticker of a photo of him on the refrigerator. And he essentially has a routine where he'll go to the corner store, picks up a scratch ticket, some alcohol, and we just follow him on his day. And then we also have Slick Charles, the local pimp, who is one of Fontaine's customers. And Slick Charles basically owes him money for a previous drug deal.
Yeah.
I don't know how a pimp can't afford to do a down payment on some drugs.
It's because he's got his sex workers like Yo-Yo walking out on him, telling him he ain't shit.
Basically.
None of them seem to listen to him. As we said, he's not very intimidating.
He really isn't. It's so hilarious. An unintimidating pimp. I can't get over it. And the joke just never runs dry.
Yeah.
So during Fontaine's routine, he runs into Slick Charles, looks for him, and finds him at a motel. They get into an argument, but that's not before Yo-Yo first gets into an argument with Slick Charles. Then Fontaine also arrives looking for some money. He finally gets the money after a funny interaction, but then Fontaine is tragically cut down by a rival drug lord, basically. Isaac.
Yeah. And this is because earlier in the day, before or while Fontaine was doing his runs, he hit one of Isaac's guys with his car.
And then that guy reported back. Yeah.
Yes, and then Isaac's guy went running back to him. He's like, Fontaine did this to me. So
I'm going after him.
They went after him after Fontaine visited Slick Charles to collect his money. And he was gunned down by Isaac and his guy. And that's how that scene ends. And it cuts to basically the next day where Fontaine wakes up again as if it was a bad dream. And he goes about his regular routine, as Alvin was saying before.
Literally the exact same routine.
Exact same thing.
Like and deja vu.
Yeah, it's just like we'll get into that. We'll get into that because
he gets his lotto.
Yeah.
He gets his alcohol. Meets the local homeless person named Frog. Pours him a drink. Yeah. Goes back to Slick Charles's place and asks for the exact same thing he asked for last night. Where's the money?
Yeah.
Slick Charles looking at him was like, what? Like, he's looking at him like he's literally a ghost.
Basically.
And he tells Fontaine, like, you literally pulled a 50 Cent on us. Like, you died.
Yes, that's what he said.
Like, you died. Why are you in front of me right now?
Yeah, and he just, like, couldn't believe it. But he eventually convinces Fontaine to, like, also hear from Yo-Yo, who had left out. And
she has an alibi.
Yeah, so she's just like, yeah, I heard the shots, like a whole bunch of shots, and basically saying that, yeah, that was you. You were the one who was killed that night. So that then leads them to being like, well, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And then
after that, they basically go on this adventure that leads them to a wild discovery where they find a freaking laboratory underneath a trap house. And there is where Fontaine discovers his previous body shot dead. And that confirms that he has been cloned and that there is a cloning operation hidden right underneath the neighborhood of Glen. And it's up to these unlikely heroes to uncover what is going on and put a stop to it.
Yes.
It's such a wild, ridiculous premise. It could easily go terribly, and they just pulled it off so smoothly.
They really did. Now that I think about it, it was just
the way we described it sounds stupid. Like it sounds like me doing a terrible pitch to Hollywood.
You got a drug dealer and a pimp
and
with
a hoe.
and a hoe
And then the drug dealer dies.
Yes, and
but then he doesn't die.
He's back because there's clones and there's labs under this city, and then the three, they get together and it's weird, but it's
Warner Brothers looking at me like, we got to get this guy in a stretcher or something.
It works. It worked. It's great. We actually watched it twice, and I would like to watch it again because there's a lot to.
There's so much to uncover. Yeah.
Yeah. In this film.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of the
nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Let's start with the events leading up to Fontaine's death, because here is where we start getting like the setup of the world. Mm-hmm. We're basically dropped into this unassuming ghetto. Looks like any other ghetto that we've seen in the United States, and it's got like this. For some reason, they somehow nail a blend of 1970s aesthetics and visuals, but then they blend it perfectly with modern day culture, modern day references, like the 50 Cent drop that Jamie Foxx mentioned. There's people that use smartphones.
Yeah.
It is a really cool thing that they did that, because I don't know, something about going back to like the 70s and the 80s and like previous decades just makes it feel a little more lived in and makes it a little more believable. I think that's like my weakness when it comes to a lot of horror movies or sci-fi movies. When you see like analog technology or like a filming style that looks retro, it just brings me back to like a sense of familiarity. But they juxtapose that with, like I said, the modern lingo that they use, the modern dialects, the modern technology that we see. We see that the Glen, it looks like really run down. Like there's like no successful businesses around. There's surprisingly no gentrification going on.
Yeah.
At least not yet.
Which is what they don't want.
This is the last thing that, because that doesn't make and things any better. That just runs people out of their homes. They do really great setup of the characters in these first moments of Fontaine waking up. We see a sense of him feeling kind of disconnected from the world, even just like in his own home. Like I mentioned earlier, he greets his mom, but only through her bedroom door. Not once does the door open.
Yeah.
Not once does the camera cut to the mom's face responding to him when he asks if she wants a sandwich.
And she just says no, and he's just like, well, okay, and walks out the door and starts his day.
Doesn't think twice about it.
Mm-hmm.
We see that he is clearly affected by the loss of his younger brother. We're getting a setup of like a history and a world that he's already lived in before the movies even started.
Yeah.
So we already get a sense that I kind of feel for this guy, and then when we see that he's a drug dealer, we're just like, oh no, he's a really complicated guy.
Mm-hmm. Especially because I guess at the beginning of the movie, there's like a little boy who is like a little informant basically, and he pays him he's supposed to pay him like $15, gives the kid $5.
He owes him $15.
He's like, you owe me, and he's got the kid riding around, and I guess the kid's letting him know like what's going on around the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And so him and the kid, they're in the car and he's driving around. That's when Fontaine hits Isaac's guy with the car, and the little boy's just in there totally unfazed, all the while talking about SpongeBob and calling Fontaine a Squidward, and all. It's so funny. And Fontaine, like you could see, like he's like pretending to be annoyed. I got the vibe he was pretending to be annoyed with the kid, playing it like that, but you could tell like he was connecting because he's like, I had a little brother, and he's like looking out for him, even though he does have him doing something that could
extremely dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous for the kid, but there's still like that, like you said, you feel for him. Because you could tell, yes, he's a drug dealer. He's probably done things.
But he's not one-dimensional. Already, right off the bat, you see that he's full of different shades and different dimensions.
Exactly.
And that's a running theme with all the characters that we follow soon after. So, as you mentioned, he runs over one of Isaac's guys because he sees, hey, this guy don't belong in this part of the neighborhood. What the hell's he doing here? This is my turf. Runs him over, breaks his leg, and then that's basically starts the whole journey from that point.
Yeah.
Because then later on, that sets up his death later on. We also get a setup of Slick Charles as a quirky, also timid pimp. But he also like has like this sort of heart to him that we see. Like he's I think there's a reason why he's not so like tough and not so cold. There's like a humanity to him that we haven't yet seen until the cloning stuff starts coming out. So I really love, and Jamie Foxx, he's one of those actors where I forget I'm watching Jamie Foxx. He just bleeds into the character. Like
he really does.
His character is different from what we've seen in his role in Spider-Man, way different from what we've seen in Django. Like he knows how to just blend in with the role so well. So we get his setup very quickly where he's this very eccentric, very funny. You just cannot take him seriously as a pimp. And we get a bit of Yo-Yo as well. And with Yo-Yo, we see right off the bat, she don't accept shit from anybody.
She doesn't.
She is so bold. She can say whatever she wants without consequence. And it's true because Slick Charles don't put a hand.
I know. I was gonna say it's mostly because her pimp ain't shit.
Yeah.
But
it's not. It's like she's like, it's not like you're gonna put hands on me or anything.
Yeah.
You're not gonna do shit.
And she's smart.
She actually has like a college education.
Yeah.
Yeah, which we learn later on.
So I feel like, like you said, there's reasons for her being in, this type of job and situation. But she has goals, and she tells Slick, she's like, I'm leaving. I'm gonna go. I don't know. There's like an equivalent to like Bitcoin that she's talking about or whatever. But I'm like, you probably do something better than like this Bitcoin thing or whatever. But she knows what she wants. It's just a matter of the environment that she's in,
being able to obtain that.
Yeah, and getting out of that and doing what she really wants to do, which I think she wants to be like a reporter.
A reporter for like news magazines. Yeah. And she fantasized about traveling the world.
Yeah.
Going on vacations.
Because at one point after the three of them were in the lab and Fontaine's like freaking out, they go back to her grandmother's house.
And you see she's got accolades. She's got trophies.
She's got all
Nancy
her
Drew books.
Yeah, so she's like, clearly she had goals. There's more to her.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And this is a running theme for all the characters in general, which I really appreciate, because with these types of characters, they're typically stereotyped in a lot of movie and shows where they're just one note characters, almost like they were just born and raised as criminals and nothing more. A lot of shows and movies don't analyze how these people get to this place. Because in our everyday lives, a lot of people have biases against homeless people that are in gangs and in drugs, not understanding how or why they got to that point in the first place.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that the movie really takes its time with the characters, not fully delving into how they got there, but you understand that these people had different lives before this life happened to them.
Yeah.
And it fleshes them out that much more.
They're not just a drug dealer, a pimp, and a hoe.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not just that. There's definitely more to them, because I feel like the story, just the movie itself would be a little lackluster if that's all they were.
Exactly. And you wouldn't care about them.
Yeah.
They would just feel like disposable characters.
Exactly.
So that they did a fantastic job doing the setup for the characters before the events of the laboratory. So like we mentioned before, there's our three characters that are perfectly set up. And they have a great chemistry. I've never seen these actors work together, and they just, it's like they've known each other their whole lives.
Yeah.
And their banter is so hilarious. No matter what's going on, even in the darkest moments of this movie, somebody's saying some quippy stuff, and it's still so freaking funny.
Yeah.
I really can count how many times or how many movies I've seen in one hand where I'm constantly laughing throughout the movie.
Yeah. When they go into the lab and Fontaine steps into the elevator, and then Slick Charles, like, he's not going in there, and because him and Yo-Yo are having a thing, Yo-Yo's like, well, I'm going, so then he goes after her. So the three of them are standing in the elevator. Fontaine's closest to the camera or whatever, and those two are in the back, and they're just like, I'm going down. And I'm just like,
why are you singing right now?
We are going to this creepy elevator we just found in a trap house, and these two idiots are in the back.
Was it Yo-Yo who started, or was it Slick?
I feel like it might have been Slick. I
think
can't
it was
remember.
Slick. And I feel like that's like a Jamie Foxx. That probably wasn't even in the script. He was just like, I'm gonna just do me right now.
And I love that so much, because I was like, I'd be right there tuning in and singing my part as well too. But it was so funny, and I was just like, this is serious. Like, what's going on? Like,
And
there's
yet
a
it
lab.
works.
It works.
It just freaking works.
And they keep having these moments like that
throughout the whole movie. And it never gets old.
Yes,
it just never gets
so
old.
good. And you can see like Fontaine's like annoyed, but
he's also kind of with it.
yes, exactly, which just makes him even funnier. But
yeah,
so
that's so funny.
The three they discover the lab, and Fontaine is just like, he's just beyond like freaked out finding his body in this lab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because that is a whole existential crisis right there. You're looking at your own body.
First, you have to believe these two saying, "Yeah, you died." Then you find the proof, you find the body, and then it's just like, well, what are the answers? Because the one person that they found in this lab, Slick Charles actually,
a creepy white man with a very kinky afro.
Yes, Slick accidentally kills him, and that's because while they were in the lab looking around, they find this lab tech in there. They hold him up at gunpoint, telling them what's going on, what is all of this.
Yeah.
At least Fontaine's doing that. Slick is at some counter sniffing some white powder.
That makes him hysterically laugh.
Yeah, just makes him start laughing. And then Yo-Yo takes some, and then
she starts being Harry Potter and mixing potions. And it causes an explosion.
Yeah, and that startles Slick after Fontaine tells him to keep an eye on the guy, and he shoots him. Yeah. And Fontaine finds his body, and they're just like, okay, well, let's get out of here because we just shot somebody, and it's they have to get out of there. Yeah. But moving on to the next scene where they're out trying to figure out, what does this mean? What do we go back to the house? And Fontaine's just trying to calm down. Yo-Yo basically tells them, we'll go back in the morning. We'll try to see what's going on at the house and see if we can get more answers. Mm-hmm. He leaves first thing in the morning with his basically his gang. They show up to the house, but the house is... And
the house is completely empty of any sort of secret entrances.
It looks like a regular house.
Yeah, the entrance to the lab is gone, so it's just a regular plain old house. And basically he's at a dead end. So he's back to square one. He can't investigate any further. So the trio end up at a fried chicken spot. To gather up their what they've seen so far and try to figure out what is going on in this place, because they can't ignore this. Yeah. They can't ignore this. So they basically meet up at a fried chicken spot, and right away when they start eating, some weird stuff starts going on. So basically it's not Fontaine, it's Slick Charles who starts noticing everyone just starts laughing hysterically. Yeah.
So basically the restaurant that they're at serves fried chicken and other food, but mostly the fried chicken. And a couple times up until this point, we see an ad for this restaurant, and in the ad everyone's laughing, and you just think, oh, it's just a commercial, it's what happened. But when Fontaine and Slick and Yo-Yo are there, they're eating, they're laughing, and we're seeing Fontaine laugh
for the first time ever.
Yeah, which
this dude
is
doesn't crack a smile up until now.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of what
triggered
Slick Charles. So he's like, whoa. He's like, Fontaine's laughing. So while he's eating, he stops eating the chicken, and then he's just like, it's in the chicken. It's in the chicken.
Guys,
and then he slaps all the food off the table onto the floor. And it was the funniest thing. Everybody around him's just like, man, what is your problem or whatever. And
he basically comes to the conclusion that whatever white powder he had sniffed the night before is in the food.
Exactly.
Because he had the same exact reaction.
They do some further investigating where Yo-Yo, goes up to the store manager, who also has a little afro white guy with an afro.
Yeah, literally looks the exact same as the guy that died last night.
Yeah, maybe they got clones of themselves or something. It's weird. Because he looks just like... Didn't he look like the guy that's in the convenience store, too?
Yes, they all look the same.
Yeah, they all look the same. God, third time, I'm going to watch it a third time because, when I tell the cloning, yes, okay. But yeah, so Yo-Yo basically, seduces him to try to get some information from him and see what's going on. And they get some information about basically deliveries going to different stores and
different companies
and places around the Glen. So Slick gets into a van where it looks like these people who are working maybe in the labs are delivering
Loading some
food,
stuff up.
loading stuff, and they're sending it certain places. So, as we said, the fried chicken, that white powder is most likely in
Laced
it,
in there.
and that's controlling people into these laughing fit.
Yeah.
He also finds grape juice in the van, and I think some
Perms
perm
as
was
well.
also in the van as well too. And we see that the perm is being delivered to a salon, and then the grape juice that was being bought by a church.
Yes.
Or was it delivered directly to the church? I assume it's just bought by the church because then
I
everybody
think the
could
church
drink
bought it from somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it made its way to the church.
So it's just like, okay, we got fried chicken, grape juice, and perm, all these
All
stereotypes.
the known stereotypes that has been peddled by white America, because I like this point that the movie kind of makes, where it highlights these little like stereotypes of like black Americans enjoying fried chicken and grape juice and getting their hair done, but it's like it pokes fun at the fact that the stereotype comes from industries that push those products. It's not so much that it's an inherently black thing to eat fried chicken or to get your hair permed. It's something that just is consumed in this country. It sells. And I like that the white substance kind of represents how that mind control that we have as consumers, where we see a commercial or we see something in the store and we get conditioned to be like, oh, I have to buy that.
Yeah.
I have to consume that. So we see that these products are being delivered to different places. You mentioned that there was a woman in the salon complaining about, was it like her job or something?
Yeah, I think she was like a school teacher or something.
Yeah,
and she's
yeah.
like clearly not paid enough, and she was talking about how she has to buy, supplies and all that stuff. And
Out of her own
as soon as
pocket.
the hairdresser applies the perm to her hair and massages into her scalp, it's just like she's like, well, I guess it's not that big of a deal or whatever. And like totally is just like it's fine with the fact that she's underpaid, overworked probably, and having to pay for stuff that should be provided already. So it's like another form of like this control that is being distributed in these products that are most likely coming from this lab that they found.
Yeah.
So I think like at one point after the whole, fried chicken thing, they get some more information from the homeless guy at the
Frog.
Yeah, outside the like the convenience store. And he doesn't really like give you details. He says like these ominous things
cryptic
and,
messages,
yeah, which leads them to a church. And at that church, that's where we see the grape juice
in effect, full effect.
As that's going around the church. It's been a while since I've been in a church, so I forget how the whole service goes and what everything's called.
It is a very hype black church. People are up and dancing, singing, chanting.
But that's only after drinking the grape juice from those little cups that they had. Basically, the pastor, he was just saying, they were talking about, I think, a young boy that had got killed. He was killed by police or something. Yeah. And he was just basically saying that, this is God's plan and
he starts saying disturbing lyrics.
Yes. Yeah. And to, believe, and there's a reason for it. And
that's the juice talking.
And it's the juice, because I was just like, no, there is no reason for a young boy being gunned down for some supposed crime or anything like that. But the pastor and what the word he was speaking to these people, it was for them to just accept and be okay with it, because God said that, or
this is part of the plan.
It's part of the plan. And it made me uncomfortable, especially watching it the second time. I was just like, wow. It's just like, not even just the grape juice itself. I was just like, this is supposed to be a safe place where people come and they believe and they worship. And it's just like, look how easily, regardless of the intent of the person, good or bad, how they can put this word out there and people consume it. People, they practice and this is what they consume and believe, so that way they can lead better lives. And the grape juice, whatever's in it, just turns it into something like that. It just made me uncomfortable. Ignorance. Yeah, and for them to be okay with it and just say, well, this happens. This is normal for, people to be gunned down by police, or a young boy to, it's all part of God's plan. And that's what we have to believe. And there's a reason for it, when there's something else aside from that could change in the community, how, Black people are treated.
Yeah.
That's what would need to change. It has nothing to do with what religions you practice. It's just this needs to change in our society, but it's not. And they're being conditioned to believe that based off of the stuff that they're consuming, that's being pushed on them to consume. So that was really crazy. But this church also has an entrance to the lab. That's where it's been moved
to. The lab. So they wait until the service is over to finally poke around.
Yes.
And finally they are able to get another lead into the laboratory. And this time this entrance leads them to a much bigger section of the laboratory, because
everything is spread out there.
They see so much. It's really disturbing.
Yeah.
It's so basically, once they get into the laboratory, they see very quickly that this project is spanning the entire area of the Glen.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just localized to that house. It's literally a whole underground world, essentially. And they're starting to discover there's clones of not just Tyrone or not Fontaine, but everyone.
Slick finds his clone.
So, which is a very interesting thing, because you and I noticed that there are clones for everybody, assumedly everybody in that town. So Slick Charles, Fontaine, but we don't ever see any clones of Yo-Yo.
Exactly. Which
is very interesting. And then that ties into something else later on. But I just thought that was very interesting. There's never an explanation or any suggestions as to why there's no clones of her, especially when she mentioned that she's grown up in this town. So you would assume they could easily collect her DNA like they did everyone else.
Well, didn't she? She went to college.
She did, but
maybe
remember
she left, came
well,
back.
I don't know. I assume this project took like decades to do, because this is a very large project, and cloning is like a serious advanced thing that humans are still barely tapping into for plants and animals. I'm going based off of my assumptions. They never give you enough information.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe that could be part of it, but I feel like they could have easily obtained her DNA to make a clone. But for whatever reason, we never see a clone of Yo-Yo.
Yeah.
She's one of a kind. She's special.
Yeah. But in the lab, they basically, as these two are these three are sneaking around. They are dressed in, these costumes that make them look like everybody else down there. And there are rooms that they're walking by where there are people that we see. There's posters around the Glen where people are missing. This is where they are. They've been sent to these labs or captured and put in these labs to have experiments run on them. There's one lab where there's these two guys and they're fighting as this music plays, and it's based off of, the music that's playing with the lyrics basically telling them to hurt each other, fight each other. And then the music changes to something that's a little more calm, telling them to like hug it out and be kind to each other, which they start to do. And then there's another lab where there's like a woman sitting in a chair and her eyes are literally pried open so she can consume whatever's on a screen in front of her.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it was just crazy. And they were just walking by like, oh my God. So this has been happening the whole time under here. Like, this is where people have been missing to.
Yeah. So they just witnessed a bunch of disturbing behavioral experiments being forced upon these people. Mm-hmm. And this is like one of those parts of the movies where it genuinely gets disturbing and creepy. Like, there's barely any room for jokes here.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. The director really knows when to balance the humor with the serious. And this is one of the moments where I'm just like, I feel like I'm going through a Resident Evil moment right now where the game's over. Like, this is no joke. This is really scary.
Yeah.
So after they start poking around, I believe Fontaine hits the alarm. And then that's when they exit through like a nightclub, right?
He doesn't hit an alarm. He shoots up his clone.
He shoots up a clone? Oh,
yeah,
I don't remember.
So
is it the... It wasn't the creepy, dapper-looking guy with the comb-over and the beard?
No.
It's not that clone?
No, you're ahead. You're ahead right there.
Okay.
No, but yeah, so when this is like when they go through the church and they get to the lab again and how they see everything that's down there, this is where they discover all of the clones.
Yeah.
And, Slick Charles sees his clone, and then Fontaine, he's looking at his clone. It looks like there's like quite a few clones of Fontaine down there where they discover all these clones. And at one point, the scene cuts away from Fontaine, like looking at his clones, and it's on Yo-Yo and Slick Charles, and then you hear shots fired. And I think it's because Fontaine, he's like
he's so just worked up. He's angry.
Yeah, he's angry. He shoots the clones. That sets off the alarm, and then those three, they have to get out of there. So they exit. They find an exit from the labs underneath, and it comes out into like a strip club or something like that.
Yeah.
And so as they're coming out, the DJ that's in this club, he's given a message. He's just like, we got like 3 bogeys or whatever coming out the back or whatever, like, you know, intercept them. So he sees them coming out of like the dressing room area, and then he starts to play this music.
Yeah.
And the music's supposed to hypnotize
the
entire crowd. And for a second, it's starting to like get slick. And then Yo-Yo realizes, she's just like, it's the music, like cover your ears, like let's get out of here. So they are able to get out of the club, and you know, they take a car, and at that point the DJ plays some other music, or he stops the music actually, and he tells them, he's just like, go after these people. Basically at this point, it's not even, I'm not even gonna play music, it's not like, even
the music anymore, just go
get these people. So everybody in the club just gets up and just starts basically chasing. It looks
like a horde of zombies.
Exactly, yes. So they get out of there for like a little bit, and then like
get into the car.
They drive the road.
Slick Charles really said, let's get out of this thriller video.
Yes, little comments like this from Slick. And yeah, but something happens with the car, and it gets stopped, and that's when we are introduced to Nixon,
well, a proper name for this villain. Of course, Nixon.
Yeah.
This creepy white guy named Nixon, who basically he's the expository dump of why they're doing these experiments.
Mm-hmm.
So he basically controls the whole crowd to back away from the car. The trio gets out of the car, gives the whole explanation, basically saying that these experiments are basically to make America safe by being able to control black people's behavior, which definitely highly disturbing and highly racist to assume that controlling black people is what's going to keep America calm.
I'm not even going to get into that one.
No, we should get into it.
We don't have enough time, Alvin. We don't have enough time.
So he basically exposits all that, and he also flexes an ability by using the words Black Olympia, or is it Olympia Black?
Olympia Black.
Black, because Fontaine is just ready to shoot this guy.
Which makes sense, because after all the shit he was talking about, you know, what they're doing, the experiments, and he's just like, I'll give you guys 2 options. You can walk away and pretend like none of this happened,
or I kill you.
And
which honestly, that's like one little plot hole that for me it feels like a plot hole. I feel like if he had just killed them and just put in some new clones, the problem would erase itself.
Yeah.
At least for a while.
That's true.
That's I'll let that slide because the movie had to continue.
It did, but I wonder if this also brings us to the fact that we haven't seen any Yo-Yo clones, because I mean,
again, that came to mind. I'm like, why is it that?
Isn't she a major part in Slick Charles' life? So if she's dead and they don't have clones for her,
yeah, I don't know, because Olympia Black also doesn't affect her either.
It doesn't.
She's able to move freely and talk freely.
Exactly.
It affects Fontaine and it affects Slick Charles.
Exactly.
Anyone that has a clone, basically. So the fact that it doesn't affect her, again, it just ties back to why doesn't she have a clone?
Mm-hmm.
There's just something special and unique about her that, again, the movie doesn't get to. And I think they want us to figure it out on our own with our own interpretations. I don't know if it's like a symbol of somebody being woke in this country where they just don't let any ignorance overcome them. Because, again, this goes back to her having dreams of getting outside of this hood and going out to make a career for herself.
Yeah.
She was threatening Slick Charles early at the beginning of the movie that she was just going to leave because she was tired of his shit.
Yeah.
And that's a constant thing that she brings up, that she can't stay here. She can't accept any of this stuff, and she wants to move forward with her life. I don't know. I really don't know besides that. I don't know if it's because she's somebody who is woke, essentially. She's someone who's aware of all the bullshit. She refuses to ingest it. She refuses to numb herself with anything. So I don't know if that is part of why she doesn't have any clones and why Olympia Black doesn't affect her.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because I think you had asked before if there was any significance to the words Olympia Black.
Yeah, I was like, did I miss something earlier with
there's nothing mentioned?
Yeah, that
but
would tie it to it.
I did like a little rabbit hole digging.
Ooh, what you find?
I don't know
Alice?
if I've I don't know if this is what the director had in mind or the writer had in mind, but I just dug into the history of the Olympics in general, because when I hear Olympia, I think of the Greek Olympics, the ancient Olympics that they used to have, and then I somehow ended up in the 1936 Olympics that was held in Germany when Hitler was in power.
Oh, great!
Just before World War II hit, he had hosted the Olympics, and we had the famous Jesse Owens, a Black American athlete who did track and field, who is a legend, and he had legendary wins in that Olympic game by winning 4 gold medals for the United States. And supposedly it really frustrated Hitler, but he didn't show it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
According to Jesse Owens, Hitler had actually waved at him, like to greet him, to salute him for his victory. But apparently he was infuriated that a Black American had won in the games against his Aryan race and his superior Aryans. And he basically this was a recounting of somebody else who supposedly talked with Hitler and worked with him. Hitler basically had said, like, oh, we shouldn't compare ourselves to blacks anyways, because they're we are like Europeans are essentially what is the word I'm looking for? God, I'm losing the word, but essentially saying they're too sophisticated to compare themselves to black people. They're like, he's basically equating black people as wild animals. So there's no point in comparing Europeans to a wild animal because it's an unfair advantage.
Wow.
And I went into that whole rabbit hole, and then I went back to Olympia Black. I was just wondering, I don't know if it's like an ironic joke that the director made whenever somebody says Olympia Black and a black person is controlled.
Yeah.
Because that's part of racism, is that white people think that they are superior to black people, when we've shown time and time again that's just not the case, that nobody is superior to anybody, and black people just they excel in athleticism. I'm sorry.
White man can't jump.
So I don't know. That's just me going down a rabbit hole of, does Olympia Black mean anything? For all we know, it could possibly mean absolutely nothing. I just wondered.
I like what you came up with.
I just don't get it, because it's so random. Olympia Black. I'm just like, you could throw any random words as your trigger word.
Exactly.
Like, why is it that Olympia Black turns you into Winter Soldier for being black? Like, so I really wonder if there's a connection to the Olympics, because this teases into like what we discover further about the project, which we'll get into soon. But it just brings up the themes of black people being seen as inferior, being incompetent, being ignorant, when the movie is showing us that black people, they are resourceful, they are strong, they can do anything even when they're suppressed by governmental forces, because hoods don't just happen on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Hoods don't just happen just because black people are ignorant. The hood happens because white people intentionally have put them in places that are underfunded, under-resourced. And you can't blame anybody for the choices that they make to survive. And I like that the movie just is still highlighting that theme that, yes, this character's a pimp, this character's a drug dealer. They're doing very problematic, dangerous things, but you get why they're in this situation and why they're doing this.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily being villainized. In fact, they're being given a chance to be heroes in this, which is why they're trying to uncover this whole evil Nancy Drew Scooby-Doo-like mystery. But that was my whole little dive into Olympia Black. After that moment, they get a chance to survive. So Yo-Yo decides not to retaliate. So the trio, they get to survive. The next day, Fontaine he's just at his lowest point.
He's like, you know what? Since we can't control anything, look at how this guy controlled me last night. He's just like,
everything's pointless.
Yeah.
He feels that he says some really sad things to Yo-Yo when she's trying to have a conversation with him about like what to do next, because she still can't give this up.
Yeah.
Even after what happened last night, she cannot give this up. So she's talking to Fontaine, and she's telling him like, we got to keep fighting. But Fontaine's like, nah, I'm part of the problem. Like, I do bad things. I make bad things happen.
Yeah.
I'm not even really
so
me.
Sad.
It was really sad. And John Boyega's delivery is so good. It's like he knows how to, for this particular character, he knows not to go overboard with his expression of emotions.
Yeah.
He knows how to play someone who's still trying to keep a hardened exterior, but you see cracks of his vulnerability and his softness and his humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Yo-Yo brings out of him. That's what she brings out of everyone. And we see that he's very tortured, and he's just completely down in the dumps. And this is just a feeling that so many Americans feel, no matter if you're like at the very lowest part of the tax bracket or if you're like working class. If you're struggling in some capacity, you feel this way to some extent, how you just feel like a piece of the machine, and that you can't do further to make things better for yourself or for everyone else. So he's unmoving. He's convinced that he can't do anything. So Yo-Yo decides that she's going to just leave town. And there's a moment of levity here where she's basically dressed as like Carmen Sandiego, just in a big trench coat, sunglasses. Not a very good disguise, because another sex worker just calls her out immediately.
She's like, Yo-Yo, is that you, girl? It looks good. And I'm like, shut the fuck up.
And as soon as she gets called out, that a mysterious black van just pulls up, kidnaps her, and we're like, ah, shit, here comes a rescue mission.
Mm-hmm.
So Fontaine finally links up with Slick Charles. They share a drink together, and they kind of go over what's been going on the past like 2 nights probably. And they basically come to a decision finally that they're going to do something about uncovering this laboratory, because they both agree that Yo-Yo is right. And this just proves that you guys, men, just got to listen to black women, because black women are right.
Exactly. Don't at me. Yeah, so they basically come up with this plan to like find Yo-Yo. They have to go find Yo-Yo and save her, basically, and get her out of that lab and basically expose the lab and what's going on in the Glen.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I guess Fontaine and Slick, they end up working with Isaac.
Yeah, the rival gang.
Yeah, the rival gang member, and it takes some convincing. But they convince him what's going on, and this whole time it was like a little confusing for me the first time when I watched. I was just like, wait, I was like, does he know what's going on?
Because Fontaine gets shot again by Isaac
and
when he proposes the plan.
Wait, what? But I don't know. Do you know how to explain the plan better than I did? Because I was still like, when I watched the second time, I was like, wait. But it was really funny once I realized that he was rehearsing lines so that way he could have everything scripted. Because if we didn't mention it, yes, there's a lab underneath the Glen, and yes, there are cameras set up everywhere around the Glen, and
they're always being observed.
They're always being observed, and they're being watched. So basically, Slick and Fontaine and Isaac and everybody else involved, they had to pretend that they were just doing what was expected of them to be
regular
doing.
routines.
Regular routines. All the while they are, passing along information so that way they could get everything set in
doing
motion.
it old school, passing the messages orally, no text messages, no.
Yeah.
Not even a bird messenger, just straight up pretending to have sex with prostitutes, pretending to do drug deals.
Yeah.
So they can pass along messages to be like, we got to meet with Isaac. We have a plan. We got to let these people know there are clones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I guess Fontaine getting shot by Isaac was part of the plan to convince him that yes, this is real. There's clones, because I'm going to show up here again tomorrow and you're going to be like, well, what the fuck?
But Fontaine also needed an in to the laboratory because
too, yes.
They had a hard enough time getting into the lab a second time. Mm-hmm. It was probably near impossible to find another entrance.
Yeah.
So they needed a direct entry, and Fontaine gets shot by Isaac knowing the plan already. So Fontaine is now in the lab and basically is able to give everyone the okay to barge into the laboratory through a corner store.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
So essentially, and then we have Yo-Yo is revealed to be captured by Nixon, and they're preparing to like do experiments on her as well.
Yeah, with the perm.
They're about to put the mental perm.
The mental perm.
I don't know what to call it. The mind control perm.
That sounds a little better. Yeah, because they have her strapped down and ready to put the perm in her hair. But it doesn't work.
Yeah,
because a Yo-Yo is wearing a really nice wig. And I think what is it? Slick actually like called her out earlier in the movie and stuff like that. I think he's with the fake ass hair or something like that. He said, and then I was like panicking. I know. I was like, oh my god, they're gonna put it in her hair and then she's gonna blah blah blah. And then I was like, oh shit, she's wearing her wig.
Yeah.
So like she pretends that like it's working, it's mind control. So then as soon as the people experimenting on her like get relaxed because they're like, all right, she's knocked out or whatever, or she's under. She gets up and she just whacks the shit out of them. And it's all perfect timing because that's when most of the Glenn's already down there, like, messing up the lab.
Yeah.
Chasing all the little lab techs and stuff like that.
It's a riot.
It really is.
It's so funny.
It's so funny. And one of Fontaine's guy, the one that always carries this little electric fan, he was sitting in one of the control rooms on the phone with one of his friends. He's like,
yo, come through.
Come through.
And bring Shawty because I want her to come through.
And bring her friends too. It was too funny.
See, even when they got to take things seriously, they can't take things seriously.
Exactly. Like you'll be cracking up, but also making sure you're watching out for like things that are like going down and like what's happening.
Yeah.
And
it's hilarious.
As we mentioned before, Fontaine, I want to call him the real we'll call him the real Fontaine for now.
Yeah.
Because he's the one we've been following for most of the movie.
Yeah, protagonist Fontaine.
Yeah. We'll call him the real Fontaine. Remember, as he's been down in the lab, he had to find a way to get in. He was actually shot by Isaac. So he's actually suffering from a gunshot wound in the shoulder. And he ends up running into his Samuel L. Jackson from Pulp Fiction ass clone.
Frederick Douglass looking ass
self. Yeah. Who was there the night.
What was his name? Chester?
Chester, yes. Chester. He was the clone that was there the night with Nixon when the trio they got discovered out of the nightclub. Yeah. And it looks like this guy Nixon has Chester, like he brings Chester around with him, bodyguard. So Fontaine ends up, running into Chester and they fight and, Chester gets the better of him, obviously, because Fontaine's already injured.
Yeah.
And then Chester basically brings him to another clone. Or no, not another clone. The original.
The OG. The real
elderly Fontaine. Old Fontaine.
Old Fontaine.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Fontaine is completely shook because now he's seeing an older version of himself, as if things weren't weird enough seeing your own dead clones of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's somebody that looks exactly like you who's like freaking 70 years old. And then we get another expository moment where old Fontaine basically explains why this cloning program is in place to begin with. It isn't just to quote unquote keep America safe. It is to literally whitewash black people, to transition them from black people to white people, because he was so traumatized by the loss of his brother, which the younger brother we see in the photo is the brother of the original old Fontaine, that he had lost during a police shooting. It was a racially motivated shooting, which is way too familiar. So that trauma just stayed with him and festered in him and really made him think that literally whitewashing black people is what's going to get them saved and safe from any racial violence, which is why we've been seeing a bunch of weird looking like mismatched white people with afros. And then he makes a comment about how they're getting close, but the hair is so stubborn. And I love that he says that, because that's kind of like the director saying like, yeah, that's right, motherfucker. Like the hair stays. Blackness can't be killed. It can't be erased. Like they're still going to be around no matter what you do to these bodies. So he's basically getting into eugenics, which is a very disturbing philosophy that scientists had before about improving the race and bettering the race by basically just like experimenting on people that are not white. And that's basically the camp that old Fontaine is in. So he is performing eugenic science to try to save black people. And it's very misguided.
Yeah.
It's awful. But I like that he at least has a strong enough motivation for why he would get behind something so awful.
Yeah. Because he's not, I mean, you can say that he's also just being controlled by white people too at the end of the day.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, his overlords are white people.
Yeah, and his trauma that led him to this, to wanting to do this, was caused also by white people.
Yeah.
So
he even literally says assimilation is better than extermination or something along the lines of that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, nah.
And Fontaine's like, nah.
Olympia Black.
Olympia Black. Chester shoot him. Yeah, which Chester does end up shooting and killing old Fontaine.
Which is like another
Fontaine.
little plot hole, I guess. But I guess technically not, because I'm just like, why would you make a password that anybody else could access?
Yeah. Well, the real mistake there was them letting Fontaine and Slick and Yo-Yo live that night when they caught them.
That was the biggest mistake
that
that
was
they
the
made.
biggest mistake. They probably really expected it to be like oh yeah, I'm a minority, I'm in this shit, community, and I'm not gonna go anywhere, so why fight it? I think Nixon was really counting on them not fighting it.
Yeah.
So that's why.
And I think
he let them live.
I wonder if the director made these white characters have so much oversight, because that's kind of a real thing where white people constantly underestimate people of color and black people, indigenous people. Like, so I don't know if that's like a running joke that he tried to put in there, or if it's really just like convenience and plot holes.
Well, I'm running with it. So.
Yeah. So, our Fontaine that we follow uses the code word Olympia Black, is able to control Chester and controls him to shoot OG Fontaine, because he really just wasn't having that story.
Yeah.
He just wasn't having it. I love that, because even though he knows,
pick me.
Go on.
Do you think the Olympia Black, like whatever that is supposed to be the words or whatever, really did work, or did you think Chester was just like listening to what elderly Fontaine said, and he's just like, wait, what? And then he's just like, you know what? I'm going to shoot him. I'm going to do it. Or do you think it was really the code word that the mind control that worked? Because what he was saying was pretty fucked up. And
it is.
Any clone that wakes up and knows that I'm not real, I'm here because of this, like...
I would say that would be a really cool turn of events, but I don't think they set it up that way, because I feel like the way that would have been filmed, they would have had like a close-up of Chester physically or emotionally reacting to it with his face, and then making a choice.
That could be true.
And we see that the only reason that he's being controlled so easily is that he's programmed. He's got the white powder in his system, whether it's in his hair or in his food. So he's perfectly mind controlled. From what we see, what the camera shows us, it's angled in a way where he was controlled. Because we rewatched it twice, and I didn't see any moments where it looked like he broke out of his trance and decided to make that decision. That would have been cool. Yeah. I think I actually would have liked that better.
Yeah.
Because then it kind of erases the little plot hole of like, well, anybody could say Olympia Black and just fucking kill each other.
Exactly.
So I now that you say that, I wish that the director had written that.
Like I said, I'm going to watch another time. I'm going to look closely. I will find that look.
I don't know, Jess. I think you should be a co-writer. I actually really like that idea. I really wish that was a thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, this works too, I guess. But from what I've seen, no, I don't think there's any interpretation
that he could have just broken out of that. And
yeah. Would have been cool, but no, I don't think that's what happened. So the main villain gets taken down. So that Uncle Tom is gone. Because he essentially is like an evil Uncle Tom. Like, I get his trauma, I get his reasoning. And that's what makes a good villain.
Yeah.
Even if you're not agreeing with what the villain is doing, as long as they have an emotionally charged backstory and motive that is compelling enough, you can at least be like, I see why you think this is a good idea, but
you still ain't shit.
You ain't shit. You gotta go. You gotta go. No. So he's gone. So now we get to basically the finale. So everyone has been storming the laboratory. All the clones are getting freed.
Mm-hmm.
Old Fontaine is gone, so the operation is officially shut down. And we basically now have them back out into the Glen town. We have news reporters rushing in.
Yeah.
The news media is just in a frenzy covering all these naked clones.
Yeah, there's just naked people walking around, and there's so much confusion. And the people in the Glen, the ones that stormed or whatever, you can see them coming together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they already came together to storm the labs, but they're coming together, checking on the clones that are just walking around confused.
Mm-hmm.
You have the news reporters like trying to speak to the clones, but I'm like, they just woke up. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it's so funny. You have that one guy on his phone filming everything. He's like, they out here cloning, motherfucker.
The same thing you see like in every viral video of a news reporter in the hood.
It was so funny. And then
so
the
funny.
news guy, he's like, yes, what he said exactly. That's what's going on.
That's the prevailing theory.
Yeah, so that's basically what's going on. The news is being, it's around the world or around
Finally,
the country.
the world is learning about this heinous project.
And the trio, they meet up again, and it looks like they are going to have plans to actually maybe leave the Glen.
They want to head to Memphis to shut down another project over there.
Yes, because it's sounds like it's happening everywhere. And
yes,
people don't know.
I mean, Old Fontaine had mentioned that this is something that's taking place in other places like Detroit, L.A., all over the country, essentially. So so Memphis is only one of many places in America where these cloning experiments are happening.
Yeah.
So, do we cut to L.A. now?
Yeah, 'cause, I mean,
that's the end of the movie. So we cut to a scene that takes place in L.A. We immediately follow another guy that looks exactly like Fontaine, slightly different hair, living a similar style. He looks like he's in the hood.
Yeah.
And this guy's name is Tyrone. He's not Fontaine.
His name's Tyrone.
It's Tyrone.
I call him.
And he's sitting down with his boys watching the news, and they're seeing all this unfold. And then the camera finally pans over to a naked clone of Fontaine, and then his friends look at him and they go, "Yo, ain't that you?"
Yes.
And then we see Tyrone's expression on his face of like just mind just blown.
Yeah.
He's like, "What the hell?" And then it just smashes to credits, and then we get a funny ass revision of Erykah Badu's Tyrone song.
Yes.
Where she literally changed the lyrics about literally being about cloning Tyrone.
I think they might have cloned Tyrone. Cloned him.
And that's the end of the movie.
Yes. It's so funny.
And that's like, I think that was the best way to end this movie.
Yeah. For anyone wondering, why is it called They Cloned Tyrone?
That was the biggest question that I had, because we watched this twice.
Fontaine,
there was not a single character named Tyrone up until the very end of the movie.
Yes.
And I remember you and I were discussing it after our second watch, because I brought up the question. I'm like, why the hell is it called Tyrone then? Yeah. If Tyrone's not a character.
I mean, it just sounds good because they clone Fontaine.
That don't flow out the mouth.
Exactly.
It doesn't. They clone Tyrone flows a lot better. So I was guessing that maybe it's just one big punchline, because when I look back at the story, there's just no other narrative purpose for why it's called They Cloned Tyrone.
Yeah.
And then I just decided to do some digging again. So I looked up an interview that Jewel Taylor had with, I believe, The Hollywood Reporter. Mm-hmm. And they got to the question of why They Cloned Tyrone. And he basically said, "Oh, it was just a joke. I thought it was funny." They always knew that there was going to be a character named Tyrone, but that he was never going to be the main character. And his friends essentially egged him on to just be like, just call it that. Just call it They Cloned Tyrone.
Yeah.
And he just was worried that it wasn't going to make sense. But then he revealed that the original title was going to be called Reagan Era or something like that. Something to do with Reagan, because the movie clearly has also strong ties to the Reagan era, where, you know, the whole crackdown on like the war on drugs was like a huge, powerful, awful thing that influenced this movie, from what I've seen. So I felt like that title would have just been too on the nose, and I'm really glad he just
Yeah.
stuck with They Cloned Tyrone.
I probably wouldn't have watched it if I'm being
Yeah, because
honest.
Reagan era is just, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like a very right wing documentary.
Yeah, and I'm like, and it's on Netflix? Hell no.
Yeah. Even with the fabulous trailer that came out, I'm just like, Reagan era?
Yeah. What?
So They Cloned Tyrone is essentially just one big funny punchline, and he was able to get Erykah Badu to get in on the punchline as well.
Yeah.
Which I just fucking love.
Because she loves her some Boyega. I understand. Yeah.
The whole cast is amazing. This movie is so freaking good.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it should have been in theaters, but I know that if it was in theaters, it would not have made money.
It wouldn't have.
It's just the promotion, I know, wouldn't have been good. And historically speaking, science fiction movies have always had a hard time being promoted in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like typical blockbuster movies where, like, you know, with a rom-com, you know exactly how to market it. With a comedy, you know how to market it.
Yeah.
You know, action, comic book movies.
And people know how to receive that because it's simple. With
science fiction movies, a lot of times there's so many layers to it that you can't give away so much in a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And our audiences are just not conditioned to hunt for movies that are a little too mysterious. And they never really found a way to properly market science fiction movies. Like, I remember when Annihilation had first come out, directed by Alex Garland, that made like almost no money. And this was... I believe this came out through Fox. It's not even an independent studio. And there just wasn't enough promotion because they didn't know how to promote a science fiction movie that deals with themes of self-destruction with a very, like, unconventional plot.
Yeah.
This is a little unconventional as well, but I don't know. I don't know if there was a way to market this better, that it could have had success in theaters, but...
I don't even remember the trailers. All I know is that I saw 3 beautiful brown people.
And actors that we really love to see.
Yeah, and the title was like funny, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
But I don't remember what they put in the trailer where I was just like, "Oh shit!" Like,
yeah,
you know, I wasn't like, "Oh, what clones and what is this
and Tyrones
and Tyrones?" And like I had no idea. I was just like, "Oh, I like those 3 faces.
Yeah,
the title sounds funny. I'll check it out."
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
So yeah, you're right about promoting, and yeah. If it was in theaters, I don't think it would have done well at all.
Yeah,
because now it's been It's been like a month basically.
Yeah. Coming to a month. And there's not a lot of conversation around
it. Exactly.
There's very few people that I follow on YouTube that have actually talked about it, which is surprising. There's like maybe 1 or 2 people out of like the dozens of people that I follow who do movie reviews that have not touched this movie, and it really needs to be discussed because it is just, not only is it smart, it's just so entertaining. Yeah. Even if you don't pick up on the things that you and I have been plucking out of this.
Yeah.
If you just watch it as just like as a movie for entertainment, it is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious. There's moments of genuine suspense and dread and creepiness.
Yeah.
And it's got heart too. It's got characters that they're basically like outsiders in society that we normally look down upon. They get a chance to be heroic because, again, yes, the things that they're doing are problematic, but that doesn't mean that they can't find redemption and find growth and self-development in the situation that they're in. And that's really like the heart and the core of the story, is that people in the hood, they're not one type of person.
Yeah.
They are not just one type of person. Just because you see them on your drive to work, they're fully formed people, and they're responding to an environment that is extremely difficult, nearly impossible for most of them to get out of.
Working against them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is all just tied to systemic and structural racism that we're facing in real life. And to have a sci-fi spin where they use clones as a means to like highlight how black people have been suppressed in this country for so long, to hold them in place intentionally, economically, and socially, I think it just all blended in well together. I don't really have any major complaints, minus like a few little minor plot holes here and there. This is a very like potent story. I can't really imagine telling it in a better way. And it just does, it takes a really fresh take on the cloning trope as well.
Yeah.
Because there's so many like movies and books about like clones and how it's all about like these crises that clones have when they find out that they're not the original clone. They touch on that, but then they elevate it to something else, something relatable to the experience of Black Americans. And it's something that everyone can appreciate, even if you're not a Black person.
Yeah.
Like me as a Puerto Rican and Salvadoran, I can look at this and be like, dude, I understand everything. Like this is one of those stories that needs to be told and shared. And I hope more people check this out after our review, because it's really just a really fun time.
It's definitely worth watching. Yeah.
And I really want more movies like this. We got to look out for this director, because that's a really strong start.
Don't jinx it. Gosh.
I know.
Don't jinx it.
Nah, he'll be fine. Yeah, and I don't know. I also picked up on like themes of like the myth of black on black crime. I hate that there's still there's people that I've known personally, like even coming out of college, that still like ran with the narrative that black on black crime is a real thing. That Black people just intentionally just do bad things to each other because they're Black and not because they're in underfunded areas. Like, I like that this movie highlights that as well, and how that just isn't the case. And it's just all about like narratives that are framed by white people in power.
Yeah. So,
yeah, there's just like so much to unpack here. I don't know. Were there any things that you wanted to mention that we might have missed? I feel like there's just like so much.
There's literally so much. Like, I'm just like thinking, I'm like, this should definitely be like in a cinema studies class or Africana studies class for like review and like, you know, research, writing papers and discussions. Like, this literally takes me back to me like, man, if I was in college, I would take this class and write this paper. This is what I would write my paper on.
I know this would be so good for that.
Because like I said, I'm going to watch this again.
Yeah.
Like,
me too.
There's so much to unpack and so much to discuss, like just watching it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like every time we watch it and we're going to watch it, we're going to have something else to say about it.
Yeah.
Something else to talk about.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's something like a little disturbing, and there are moments that made me uncomfortable. Some of them were relatable. Some of them I see around me, you know, in my everyday.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so, like, the way they did it, like, the way they executed, like, this message and just, like,
just it didn't feel preachy.
It just felt like, wow, yeah, I get this. I relate to this. I understand this. This is...
Or, like, this is a very interesting way to spin it.
Exactly. That's how it felt. And that's also another thing that made it very enjoyable, is just how they put this together. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Definitely. And man, I don't know. This cast is amazing. I love that these three work together, and I hope we get to see more of them together in future projects, because their chemistry was just off the charts. And Teyonah Parris specifically, I've really only been exposed to her in WandaVision and a few other things. I think she was also in the new Candyman movie.
Yes, she definitely was.
Yeah.
In that.
I feel like I just started getting exposed to her just like the last 2 years, but I'm sure she's had a lengthy career.
Yeah, she was in the Dear White People film.
Oh, yeah. I did not like that movie.
I didn't like it, and then I ended up not liking the show because I don't know where the hell they were on that show.
Let's not get into that.
Yeah, I know, like, nobody probably knows this movie, but The Photograph with Issa Rae and Lakeith, remember?
Yeah,
we went to go
see
that?
Yes.
It wasn't that like amazing of a movie. It was just
a
like,
nice date night movie.
Yeah, a date night movie with brown people. So that's why people don't really remember it. But go watch that. I remember that was a really cute movie. She's gonna be in the Marvel. She was in WandaVision. That's where I first realized I was
started
just like
taking notice of her. Because
like you said, she's been in other stuff, but I think it was like the WandaVision. I was just like, who is Monica Rambeau? I like Monica Rambeau.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And her character is just such a standout. She really is. She's just so magnetic, and she's so full of heart, and she's the reason why the trio gets out of this safe and sound and is able to save other people. Because she is just unyielding. She really just will not take no for an answer.
And even, I feel like, yes, they came to expose the lab and save her, but I was like, she probably didn't even need saving. You know?
I know, somehow she probably could have broke out on her own.
She probably could have broke out, which she never stopped fighting.
Yeah.
You know, she always was like a plan. She's going to come up with something. She's going to do something. Which I really liked about her character.
Yeah.
Driven and like I said, that's probably why she didn't have a clone that we know of. Maybe why she wasn't mind controlled, because she's clearly, you know, she's got a mind of her own. And she's got goals, she's got dreams, she's got, you know, this drive in her, which I really liked about her character.
And I feel like it just felt natural to write her this way, because there's just so many women, particularly black women, who are always putting in the work in their communities to uplift all the people that, you know, they come in contact with. Even with the men in their lives, you know, a lot of us would not be around if it weren't for women supporting and like also just like uplifting us and like just talking sense into us. Like, because when you see like the Black Lives Matter movements, and historically when you look all the way back to like women's suffrage and how black women were finally able to vote because black women had to put in the work to get to where they're at, because white women had the privilege of voting before black women ever had. White feminism never showed up for black women and other women of color. It was always black women at the forefront of movements and revolutions that, you know, that was the catalyst for those movements. And this character just kind of embodies that without it being, again, preachy or like over the head. Yeah. It just felt very natural. At least that's what I took away from that character. Because again, there's just something special about her where she doesn't have a clone. She doesn't get brainwashed by Olympia Black. And she's ultimately the brains behind, you know, getting everyone out of there, because she's the one that's trying to tell people like, you need to get out of this stupid routine where you think you're, you know, a lost cause and that there's nothing else you can do. Yeah. So all the characters all around were really special and really awesome, but she was particularly very special to me. And man, I hope we see more work from this team, because this was a really fantastic movie. It was. So let's stop gushing over it. I know. We've gone long enough. So I think at this point, I would like us to introduce our rating system. Ooh. So we've got a rating system. It's going to be goofy. I want you guys to just go with it, accept it. Don't question it. Don't. It's silly, but I think it works. So we're going to have a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the weakest to 5 being the strongest grade. Yes. So starting at number 1, we've got a rating of rotten potato. Yes. This movie's nasty. Don't eat it. It's bad for you. That's what rotten potato means. Just throw it out. Yep. It's full of pus. Ooh, okay. At number 2, we got the salty spud. You did your best. You were cooking this potato, but you just got your ingredients too strong. It's too salty. It's got a bad taste in your mouth. It leaves a burn in your mouth. So you could watch this movie, but just know there's going to be some pain. Yeah. It's not that bad, but it's going to be bad. Number 3, we're at baked potato. It's nice. It's soft. It tastes pretty good, but it could use more flavor. It could use a lot more. So it's decent, and it's edible. Next, we got loaded potato at number 4. So this is a really good movie. You got your butter, you got your cheese, you got your bacon. Oh my God, the bacon. You got all kinds of good stuff, man. All kinds of good stuff. So this movie got good stuff. It's a loaded potato. And then at number 5, the legendary, the most potato. This movie just has the most potato. It's just so much potato, you can't even fathom it. It's perfect. There's no flaws with it.
And that's what They Cloned Tyrone is getting.
Oh, you giving it the most potato?
It's the most potato. The most. It's giving the most potato. Yes. That's how I rate it.
Interesting. Okay. Nice. I was going back and forth for a while. I'm going to give this a nice, very strong loaded potato. This movie is a loaded potato. It's got all the good stuff in it. Don't give me that look. You don't give me that look. I know for somebody who has very minor complaints, you'd think I'd give it the most potato. I'm just feeling a strong loaded potato. I just feel like there are other movies in my mind that come to me immediately that say just most potato, and this movie doesn't reach that quite yet. So I'm going to give it a loaded potato grade. It's very good. It's really good. It's delicious. This movie, you can ingest it. You won't get enough of it. It's so good.
I mean, you don't got to convince me. I'm not listening to you.
So those are our grades. So the most potato and the loaded potato.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely worth a
It's
watch.
worth watching. Yeah.
Really good. I really wish Netflix would put out more strong gems like this because they spend way too much money on stuff that is not even worth 30 minutes going into it. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we got a win from Netflix. So that is They Cloned Tyrone. I don't have anything else to say. It's just there's so much to say. It's so good.
Yeah. Just check it out and,
Leave us your thoughts. Yeah, we're going to put polls and questions on our episodes. So please engage with us and let us know what you think of this movie. If you've seen it, just respond to us in the polls or the questions. You'll see that. And with that, we want to thank you guys for tuning in to our latest installment of the Most Potato Podcast. I'm Alvin.
And I'm Jess.
And we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye.